Right, good morning, guys. Let's get started. Others can join as we go along. So, quick round of yes if you have seen both the videos, session 3 and session 4. All right, wonderful. So, we'll kick off with a quick recap of session 3. In the previous sessions, we had looked at how um, we get potential users to our App Store page, and once they're on the App Store page, how we can convince them to install the app. And now that the app is installed on the device, what can we as marketers do to maximize usage of the app? That's what we're going to look at today. And uh, so, as we saw in the video, the app installed is just the beginning. What you're really competing for next is the time and attention of the user. And there's so many apps that are used only once, so you don't want to be a part, or be in that situation because you've put in all that effort. Uh, The first concept that we looked at in this video was deep linking, and how, you know, the web is 100% deep linked, but with apps that's not the case, or was not the case. It's improving now. The key thing is that instead of just coming to the home screen of the app, you're able to go directly to a section within it. And we saw how without deep linking, it can be a frustrating experience for the user to find a certain section or go to a certain section within the app. But with deep linking, just by tapping it or clicking it, they can go directly to a certain section within the app. But the key challenge, and the reason why apps are 100% of apps are not uh, deep linked, was, as we saw, that what happens to these links? What happens when the app is not installed? So if the app is not installed, how do these links work, or do they work at all? And that problem is obviously not there in the web, because you are using a web browser, and as long as you have a web browser, you'll be able to get to a certain link. But with apps, if you don't have that app, how do those deep links work? And that was the key challenge, and some of those challenges are solved by using deferred deep linking. And for all practical purposes, will be, deferred deep linking is now known as deep linking. We just use the word deferred over here to help you understand the difference, as well as uh, uh, the additional aspect that is getting done by this. So without deferred deep linking, you might be able to take the user to a mobile page and to the app store after that to install the app. But once he installs the app, the first screen that opens up will be the generic home screen. But with deferred deep linking, what can happen is that even though the user is going to the app store in between to install the app, you recognize that fact that he had actually clicked on this link and directly open a certain different screen on the app once it's launched, instead of the generic home screen. And then we saw the various ways in which deferred deep linking needs to be effective. The first thing is that it needs to detect whether the app is installed or not on the device. Second, based on the user's device, it needs to automatically redirect to the right app store or the app itself. You should be able to track right from the origin to the install, um, and have a good view of where those users came from and what did they do inside the app. Also, you should be able to pass through metadata, even though in between the user might be going to the app store and installing stuff. So it's not just getting to the right screen, but getting to the right screen with the right uh, parameters. And then this can also be used to personalize based on who actually sent it. Then we looked at some use cases of deep linking as marketers. The very first one was that when people come to a mobile site and see an ad, see an uh, banner that says that get our app, uh, it doesn't just get the user to install the app and opens up the home screen, but opens up that exact same page that the user was on while he was on your mobile site. So the same screen opens up. Another use case is deep linked ads, and what can happen over here is that when somebody searches for or taps on an ad for your product and goes to the App Store to install it, the very first screen that opens up is what you were kind of pitching to the user in the ad itself. So it doesn't have it can pass through some of these parameters, it can pass through the context, or it can pass through an offer. All of those situations can be tackled with deep linked ads. Another very good use case is content sharing. So if you want to your user to share a certain piece of content or certain screen or certain in this case a song, but it applies equally well to say news stories or other forms of content, then when the user goes to share that with his friends, we have to recognize that the first of all that the other person who it was sent to could be on a different platform, could be on iOS, Android, etc., as well as may not have the app installed. So even if the user is on a different platform, so for example I shared it with Kanika, who is on iOS, and I have an Android phone, that same content should work, right? Provided obviously the app exists. But the link also should work even if she's on a different platform and doesn't have the app installed. So if I send this song, it will recognize that Kanika has um an iOS phone, doesn't have the app installed, get her to install the app. And once the app is installed, she'll actually go directly to this song, um, which I shared. And then we also saw how it can help with rewarded referrals by eliminating the whole process of doing manual codes and so on. And it can also offer personalized onboarding. So if you know that the user has come from a certain place or come because of some offer or come because of some other person who's referring, then the onboarding can be much more personalized as well. And the last use case from a marketing standpoint that I want to highlight is app indexing. So if when people were uh, searching for stuff on Google, typically you would only get your mobile site shown to the user and the user goes there. But with app indexing, what can happen is that Google recognizes that this particular user has the app installed. So instead of taking that user to the same site or the same mobile site, it can open up the app directly. Obviously, the user still has a choice to open up the site if they so want to. So all of these things, as you might see, they help uh, tremendously with driving usage of your app, getting the user to uh, use the app more and more, and that's kind of the objective that we're looking at. Uh, then next we saw that when we are wanting to drive usage, the key things are that how do you in this game that you're playing, how do you kind of keep score and win it? Uh, so even before you start executing on your journey, you want to map out the entire journey, see for yourself how what are the metrics for acquiring users, onboarding users, engaging users, retaining, as well as helping them spread the word. So we want to help define those metrics in the very beginning, and also not just all of these different metrics, but the key metric that you want to track, and that key metric can be very different for different type of apps. We saw how for Facebook it might be something like daily active users, but for an app like Uber, it actually could be something like rides per hour. And we also saw that quality of users that you're acquiring is going to define how much usage and you know engagement you end up generating. In our previous session, we had seen how getting users at the lowest cost, uh, you know, and looking at different campaigns, seeing which one is delivering the least cost per install, and therefore saying that okay, this is the lowest cost campaign, and spending more money on that was the point, and which was fine till there. But now that you have a better sense of what we need to do in the next stage, which is maximizing usage, you will start looking at your most important metric over here, which is your lifetime value. And lifetime value, for those of you who are not familiar, essentially is uh, two parts. One is lifetime and one is value. Value is the amount of money or revenue that you will generate from the user, and lifetime is basically say that duration, which is not just 1 month or 1 week or whatever, but over the entire time that the user was uh, with you, which means that right from the time he installed the app to the time he uninstalled the app. So if you look at how much revenue gets generated from an average user right from the time he installs your app to the time he uninstalls it, and what is that total revenue, that number should obviously be higher than your ECPI. So if that number is higher than your ECPI, then that campaign is good, and you can continue to spend money on it, uh, irrespective of whether it is higher than other ones that have a lower ECPI. There might be situations where something might have a very low effective cost per install, but the lifetime value is lesser than that amount, which means that those users are coming in, but then very soon either just uninstalling or not giving you any uh, positive ROI. So if you're getting users and they are just going away and not giving you any revenue, then you don't want those to acquire those users, even though it might be at a lower cost. Whereas some other platform or other means to acquire users, it might be more costly initially, but those users actually end up giving you revenue. And therefore, uh, for each source or each acquisition source, you should start looking at these numbers. What are your conversion rates, installs, uninstalls, and whether ultimately is your lifetime value more than ECPI. So for you as a marketer, ECPI is only one of those things that help you define which campaigns and to run and where to spend more money. Only when you compare truly your lifetime value to your cost per acquisition is when you'd be doing justice to your job. Next up, once the users have come in, you want to start segmenting them based on many different parameters, right from usage of the app itself to other parameters about demographics and what location and device the user is on, as well as what he might have done before he uninstalled your app. So defining these segments helps you communicate the right thing to the user. So uh, for example, if sorry, so for example, we saw how if a user has installed your app but not done a registration, then you want to reach out to those users and say that uh, please complete the registration, and you end up getting some benefit out of that. Or if somebody had added some products to a cart but not finished that purchase, then you can reach out to them for completing that transaction, and so on. So doing the segmentation is critical to being able to communicate the right thing to those users and engage them. But at the same time, as you might look at this, you might realize that doing this segmentation is not easy and can be very manually intensive, right? So there can be a certain set of users today who are not activated. You might do some activity on them after 2 days or 1 day or whatever, but after a time you'll have to again do this, right? And you'll have to keep on doing this over and over. And to solve for that, there are platforms called app marketing automation, and which essentially does three things. So first is that It analyzes the behavior of the user in real time and puts them into various segments. So that's the first thing. So looking at behavior and putting them into segments. And then the next is that it can personalize. You can create communication for these set of users, and you can even personalize it and send it to them. So not just a segment, but you can actually make it look like it is personalized for that user. You can use various aspects or various numbers associated with that account and send those communication, as well as most importantly, you can do that automatically, which means that you can set this up once and then automatically it will keep on looking at behavior of newer and newer sets of users, automatically putting them into various segments and then doing this activity or this communication on them. And then we saw some examples and a video about it. And next, we saw the engagement channels available to us as an app marketer. What are the ones that are inside the app as well as outside? And we looked at two of these, which is in-app messages and notifications, um, in detail. And for in-app messages, we saw that they look and feel like the app, but they can come in various shapes and sizes, full screen, modal, or even slide away. Uh, The good thing is that you can reach users in real time as they're using your app and nudge them to the next key action. Uh, However, the challenge is that you cannot reach users who are not currently using your app at all. And the other side is push notifications, which can be shown in a very high visibility area. So this is the place where people are looking for their WhatsApp messages or email notifications and so on. And right between that, your notification can come in. Uh, but it is an extremely personal area, and therefore you want to make sure that you get it right in terms of the content, frequency, as well as the timing. And the key benefit is that you can reach users outside the app in real time. So even if they're not using the app, it's not open right now, it can show up for them. But the key thing is not to spam the users, otherwise they will uninstall your app or block notifications of your app. And um ideally, you want to provide, if you are doing any kind of marketing notifications apart from the core product, then you want to provide a preference for uh, disabling that. And last, we looked at the referral case study of Airbnb and how they first define their metrics and then set it up, and they set up a very personalized onboarding flow for these set of users. Oops, sorry. As well as uh, iterated on the test on the messaging and tested it. Because they were tracking all these different metrics, they were able to see which one was performing better, um, and then continue to push those metrics by improving on the product side as well. All right, so that was a recap on the video for session 3. We're going to get into exercises for this now, but before we go ahead, any questions, guys? Good time to ask. Any questions from this video session? All right, so then let's walk through the onboarding. Okay, the other thing that could you repeat the LTV part? Okay. Uh, so the core concept is that you try to understand how much revenue, once you acquire a user, once you get somebody to install your app, how much money will you earn from that? That's what you're trying to understand. That's the core of lifetime value. Now, at a definition level, it is basically saying that how much revenue are you generating from the time the user installs your app to the time he uninstalls your app. Now that revenue can be any form of revenue. It can be things that are either within the app. They could be in-app purchases. Could be revenue from ads. Many different ways. But the at the core of it, total revenue generated by a user in the entire lifetime that he is there with you in the app. Uh, Obviously, this number is not for a particular user. You try and look at it at an aggregate basis or on a segment basis. So you look at it saying that, okay, for the my overall app, my lifetime value is typically so much, which means that there would have been, like, say 10,000 users would have come to your app, installed it, or some of them might have uninstalled it, and what is the total revenue that you have generated out of it, and kind of divide it. So many platforms give you this number automatically. You don't have to sit and calculate it, but in case you are doing that, then uh, that's what you're trying to do. Your uh, total revenue divided by in that total duration. So once you have this number, Devdutt, it becomes very useful for you as a marketer there, because then you know that, okay, my cost for acquiring a user should be within this. Otherwise, if it is going over this, it means that we are losing money on every new user that we acquire, right? So that was the context in which I was talking about LTV. Any other questions? Or I hope that's clear, Devdutt. No, no, sir, please. Okay, so let's get into this exercise. Uh, So we'll use an example app. Anybody wants to give an example app, or we'll use something? Actually, let me just give you one because it'll be faster that way. You guys are shy as well. You didn't give any app for exercise last time. Anybody on iOS? No, Devdutt, Uber is not a good example here. So, okay, let me give you the link for iOS as well. This is the link for Google Play Store. And this is the link for the um, iOS App Store. So what we need to do, guys, is that we will be installing this app on our phone, uh, and we'll launch the app and start using it, and we'll have to get to a stage in the app where we understand what that app does. So we obviously, we are looking at the app on the App Store. The basics we will probably know, but assume that you are somebody who's trying to create an invoice, and to create an invoice, you want to, instead of trying to do it on a Word or Excel or whatever, you're trying to do it in a scalable way so that every time you can do it quickly. And to do that, you want an app on your phone, and that's the context in which you are installing this app. So now, you, uh, given that you want to create an invoice, you've installed this app, and now the story or onboarding really begins. Each of you will install this app, and we will then walk through, or rather each of you will then go through and reach a stage in the app where you feel you have got to the objective, or got a good sense of what it is doing, uh, and then let me know once you're done, and then we will jointly go through it. So 5 minutes, 10 minutes max, guys. Please let me know when you're done. Once you're done, yeah. Start using it, Subhash. So once you've installed it, start using it, and once you have used it to a certain extent where you feel you've understood, or completed the onboarding, then let me know. Okay, so I think everybody's done. Let's get started with going through this. So the first question I have is, did this app require a sign-in? Did it require you to sign in, but did it block you off with username password field? Yeah. So the short answer is that they actually didn't require a login. There was an option for it. That's different. But there are many apps that you might generally install, and the first screen that you see is just a login screen or a register screen, right? So they force you to do a registration account creation, which they haven't done here, which is good. So otherwise, users end up just leaving the app from there. So anyway, so they've started off. Now they obviously they are taking sign your take information, but if you notice, as you might see in this, the core purpose of doing this flow of getting started is to get a user to be able to create his first invoice. If the user creates his first invoice properly, and he will immediately see value in what this app is doing and how it can be done. So they could have chosen to just take the user directly, just inside the app. They wouldn't need to kind of do this flow, so to speak, but they're doing it here because they want to handhold the user and get them to understand what the app is all about. So they first obviously take the business details. This obviously will show up on the invoice, so that's why it is an important thing. They mentioned that here, and they're also saying that it can be edited at any time. And some of you may not have noticed, but they you can choose to just go ahead as well without like filling anything. None of the fields were mandatory as such. That part is not very obvious, but I'm just telling you some of the parts that they've done well or not. Yeah, so it's good that they've mentioned this, although it is still it's kind of what is called a micro copy. Uh, so they're trying to make sure that most people end up filling it at least, right? So there'll be some people who will be like, why the hell do I need to do this, or and so on, and they will read this and probably just skip it. But for most people, they will kind of fill this up and go ahead. So did that, and next they want to. Uh, Now, next thing is that they ask to put in the logo, and when you do choose to do that, then it will ask you permission for accessing photos. Now, if this app had right at the very beginning, at the very first screen, so right here at when it launched, if it asked you for giving access to photos, would you have done that? I just installed this app. These guys are now asking me access to my photos. Why the hell does this need access to my photos, right? That's what we would think, right? So but now that you've come to this stage, you put in some business information, now saying, okay, business logo needs to be put in. Obviously, the logo you can't type, right? You need to select it. And obviously, if you are doing it from your phone, then it will need access to wherever that it is stored. Even if you have it somewhere else on some other link and so on, at least on the iPhone, you will have to uh, put it in your photos and then from there upload it. So now this permission being asked when you tap on this makes much more sense, right? So it is being asked in context, right? It is being asked in context and therefore a much higher chance of being said yes to. Next, they actually had a screen which they started asking some additional questions. Uh, Primarily was that they started asking the industry. Obviously, over here, as I started typing, they started showing the relevant industries, then wait for me to fully type it. Also, the other thing on the screen, as you will see, is that it starts off with just one field, but then it started asking other things on that same screen, right? and almost I think four things they end up asking, but they're asking it one by one, right? And if they'd shown you all of these four fields together, and these you don't necessarily feel like they're really needed for an invoice, maybe something like this part might be interesting for or useful for creating an invoice, but the other is not so much, right? Maybe something a little bit, but I feel that they're trying to kind of get a good sense of who are the type of users who are using it, and maybe industry could be used for type of or a theme of the invoice and so on and so forth. But uh, bottom line, if somebody asked you all these four questions right at together, you probably would have just skipped it. And also it would have looked very overwhelming, right? It would have looked like kya four big questions here, and you would have kind of just skipped it. But by asking you one by one, they kind of change the game over there a little bit, one tiny question at a time. um, Anjuman was saying that they did ask for all permissions as soon as I clicked install on the Play Store. Uh, yeah, Anjuman, that is still there. On Android, you still do need to give permissions to uh, all of the things right at the beginning. But based on the version of your OS, I don't know what version you are on now, but based on that, they start asking you again now. So you might have said yes over there, but uh, as you start using the app, they start for asking permissions. On Android, I think M and above is where that happens. Also on Android, like for example, this was an example of iOS. So the screenshot is from iOS. So uh, access to photos, etc., is required to be shown. On many Android devices, that's not the case. Um, for Unless it is something like location or something like you know make calls, those ones don't really come up. So so yeah so uh, given that a lot of Android devices are yet not asking it in real time, they first at least show it on the Play Store. So that is one permission in bulk that you kind of do, but then in context it again asks you on certain version and above. And also one good thing or a smart thing, or depending on what you want, how you want to look at it. Some apps are still circumventing that. What they do is that they say that we are targeting a previous version of Android and a lower API level, as it's called, and they are still skipping around that situation where you ask the user the permission in real time. So even though you might be on the latest version of Android, because the app is saying that I'm trying to target a previous version or a lower version of the API, I don't need to adhere to this thing of asking the permission in real time. And some of the biggest companies in the world are still doing this nonsense, including guys like Snapchat and Facebook. So but I think this August onwards, those rules become very strict. You end up having to always target the latest version of Android, and or rather, you can't target anything more than I think 18 months old, and therefore some of these permissions aspects will come up much more strongly at that time. All right, so once they have asked you all this information, they're now saying, okay, you're all set. Create your first invoice, and now over here again they're giving you option to just click on finish, and you would go to the screen of the app. But now by hitting create first invoice, they actually got you to a screen that looks something like this, where they're actually creating invoice. And even over here, they haven't left you alone, right? They've said on a lot of things on this screen, if you just come to it, you're like, okay, what do I do? Should I change this number? Should I change this? All this thoughts would start coming, but they've started to guide you over here. Okay, just fill the client name first, right? So once you go in, now at this stage, I feel they could have. I got this pop up right away. Didn't wait for anything. If I had hit on import contact, I would have got been fine, kind of giving this permission. But given that they just popped it up, I didn't feel comfortable. So fill that in manually. Then after I came back, hit save, came back again. They didn't again drop the ball there. It continued to say, okay, tap to add an item. Once I went in, all the price points etc. were there to be put in. If you notice on the previous, when I was trying to fill in over here, it was the normal keyboard and there was no numbers, so the number keyboard wasn't active. But when I came to a field that required the price, it ended up showing the number keyboard, right? So it recognized that this is a so they put in coded in the fields correctly to show them uh, the right keyboard. And these things matter. Otherwise, the user would have had to come here, go to the number field, and then do it. And these small things end up, making things easier for the user. And now that the client name is put in and the first product is put in, they didn't even ask you to add another item. They could have said, okay, add one more item over here. But no, what they've done is that they said, okay, hit this button here to preview your invoice. And they know that the invoice is probably not done. Many things are still incorrect. Many things need to be further done. But they're getting you to go to the next stage, and right away you get to see the invoice. And now, just by looking at this, immediately the user gets to know, yes, this is how the invoice is, and these are the things I filled in. This is how they end up looking over here on the screen. So if I do want to change something, I can do it in whatever way. Some of the field that I might not have filled in earlier or filled in incorrectly, I can fill those correctly now. So it gives the user a much better sense. And now that he is back, he can put in all those values, and with that they kind of complete the onboarding flow. And now just if you can look at other screens over here, they have the various projects for which you want to invoice the clients, and then you end up seeing that here's a client name that I filled in as well, and so on. So now just think about this app. Technically, functionally, if you were just you build this app, first screen would have been like, okay, maybe you open the app and there's that orange screen over there that says, okay, great, and now you know get started. But if the right away, if you took the user to this screen, right, would he understand what is going on, how to do something, etc.? Probably not. He might even maybe realize that, okay, this is what he needs to hit to create the first invoice. He may not. He may, some of this might even be blank, right? Uh, so the user will not even get a full context of what is happening. And if you notice, this invoice they've kind of created as a dummy one already. Even if I had skipped the onboarding and not done this, this one invoice would still be there, and I would still be able to go in and kind of have a look at it. So many good things that they did with the invoices. Just getting to the user to this screen, hoping that he would tap on this, and once he taps on this, he would end up coming to some screen that looks like this, and probably would not have had even this over here. It would just have all of these values. It would be very difficult to get the user to realize how to create that first invoice, and it would not be as good an experience. All right, so with that, let's come back to our slides. So we saw that no sign up was required, and they were doing at least partly permission priming. And just to clarify what permission priming is, we saw an example of that where you were educating the user and asking for, or rather, you were asking for the permission in context, right? Only when you needed it is when you were asking for a certain permission. You didn't ask for it right at the very beginning, uh, which is fine for situations where it is very clear what the app is about. If it's clear what the app is required, needs this for, then you can ask for that right up front. If it is not clear, and it is not critical for the app to be used. So for example, the photos was not critical for this app, you can create an invoice without an image, without a logo. It is not critical for it, and so on. It asks for it in context later on. And then if you have a situation where there is some permission that is needed, but it won't be very clear to the user right away why this permission is needed, then you first educate the user about it. Give him some context, give him some reason why this is needed, and then uh, ask him to enable that permission when he taps on this. And the other is that you you can ask this within the app later on if it is not critical. So later on, you can ask the user, giving him some background or educating him why you need this permission, and then ask him for the permission. So these, by doing this, you get, and this is very important, as I said, on Android as well as iOS, because just popping up these alerts for the permission is the worst thing that you can do to your user, and it will certainly not build that trust further. All right, so that was about this app. Anshuman, interesting that they got this app. This is another way for them to help retention and help you further along uh, using the app. Did you give your email someplace? Okay. So okay. Next is so what do you think is the key engagement metric of this app? What is the key engagement metric? What is the metric that you should be tracking for this app? One key metric. Obviously, there are many different metrics you can look at. How many people installed it, how many started it, how many finished the onboarding, how many create the first invoice, etc., etc. What is the key one that should be tracked that helps you give a very clear understanding of uh, number of invoices created in a day? Okay, invoice created is fine, it's useful, but I think there's something further that can be the key metric. Just creating an invoice is a good metric for sure, but will that mean that this user will stick around and actually use the app? Not always. There's another metric that if you track, then you'll have a much better sense of the success of this app. Anybody else? Thoughts? Wonderful, Subhash. That's the answer I was looking for. So if you create an invoice and send it, then you know that, okay, not only did the user create an invoice that was actually useful to him, but now he's actually sent it, and we have shown him those other features of, do you want to get notified when somebody reads it and things like that, and that will really get the user hooked onto the app. So now you got him to a stage where he's actually expecting money to come through because of this app, and therefore he won't mind maybe even paying you a little bit. I'm sure none of you have kind of noticed till now the monetization part of it. They haven't kind of yet come in. After you create three invoices when they show it, which is very sneaky, at least in my opinion. But anyway, that's how they've done it. All right, so quick exercise two before we move to the second part of today. What do you think are the auto trigger notifications that this app should set up for the user? So if you are doing app marketing automation for this app, what are the ones that you would set up? Just one, two examples right now, and then we'll move ahead. I'm saying what are the auto trigger notifications that you would set up for this app, which means that you have to define what happens or what state does the user reach, and at that state, what do you want to communicate to the user or send the user. So let me give you one example. Uh, so the user has installed the app, but not yet started the onboarding flow. So at that stage, if the user has installed the app but not done the onboarding flow for up to 2 days, then you send this auto trigger notification. Another example, as you might have seen, which is again a auto trigger marketing message, is the email that you just saw. Uh, they sent a uh, email because you had installed the app, and automatically it came in. Yes, Dave, that's for the same app that we just did. We're continuing with just so that we have that same context going on. So I need at least 3 or 4 auto trigger notifications from you guys. Please type in and send that we can discuss. Guys, I'm seeing some of you are giving answers, but we need exact, we need to define, we will to define that situation. You can't just say it broadly. It needs to be mathematical almost, right? Because that's how you will define it in your app. User who has done X but not done Y, and so much time has passed or something like that. And also, how will you want to show that to the user? Will it be a push notification or an in-app message? Okay, so let's look at some examples. So Subhash is saying that somebody who created an estimate but not invoiced. So Subhash, how much time difference between it? You have defined that. So I created an estimate and 2 seconds have passed. Should I show a notification about not invoiced? No, right? It has to be after a certain point of time. Also, notification on pending payments. So how will you define it? You will define it as invoice due date plus X and whatever that X is, or on date, or you could be multiple as well. So you could first say that, okay, there'll be one notification that says on the due date, directly remind me. So if a due date for an invoice has come that has been sent, the invoice is in sent state, right? So created and sent, and on due date of that invoice, send a notification to the user reminding him that this payment should come in today, right? So you have to, like I said, your requirements need to end up being mathematical or very specific or very exact things that you can measure in the app, because that's how you'll be able to set it up to be done automatically. Otherwise, it's like a manual process. So in this case, so project complete, you will obviously not know, right? So therefore it is not a good example of an auto trigger notification. On the other side, you could say that some estimates have been created, um, and in whatever, for example, if the user is in a certain industry, uh, then you say that estimates that have been created but not invoiced for a month, for example. A month is a good broad enough time frame. You could say that, okay, there are 5 estimates, so there are X estimates which have not yet been invoiced in your account. Tap here to view them, right? So that's the type of notification that you would create. Anjuman saying we have added 2 new features. Check them out. Good example. Anjuman, you typically use independent single features for this kind of a notification, because then you can take the user to that section directly versus just taking him to more text, right? Devda has said a similar thing. Reminding to share the app after say 3 uses. Yes, Anjuman, that's a good one. So app has been used for 3 sessions, then ask the user to share it, or tell somebody about it. But the key thing over there will be, you have to also, I mean, just 3 sessions could be very quick as well. So you want to say that over at least 2 or 3 days. So whichever is later. So app has been used at least 3 times, or uh, a minimum of 3 days have passed since time he installed it, or time since he first used it. So first launch plus 3 days, plus it is now a total of 3 sessions. Then show a notification for sharing the app. They are saying push notification on discount coupon code to send users whose invoice exceeds a certain limit. Okay. Okay. Kind of thing that someone set up but not used for a week, so has installed the app but not yet started using it. Show notification for a quick demo, and this will need to be a push notification because he's not in the app. Good point, Kanika. All right, so I think we have a couple of good examples here. As you might start realizing, there can be so many of them. You have to really, at one level, some people don't end up thinking this at all. Other level, people end up putting too many. So you have to find that right balance between these two. All right, so with that, we've completed the marketing side of things. So we've looked at how to acquire potential users, maximize interest in them through your own media, blogs, publications, etc. Get them to the App Store, where you try and maximize your conversion rate by having the right visuals and App Store optimization and so on. And then once they have the app on the device, you maximize usage by things like app marketing automation, re-engaging through push notifications, and deep linking. So with that, let's move to the next session, or next part of today's session, which is monetization. So now that we've looked at how to acquire a user, how to engage and retain them, how you can drive virality of sharing and so on. So you have a certain set of users. Now you want to look at how do you kind of start earning money from those set of users. We'll kick off with a quick recap of the video. So many different ways that we saw in the video, many different ways to earn revenue, but the key ones that we're focused on are the in-app methods, or where the user pays or doesn't pay within the app, what are ways in you can monetize. So paid apps, freemium apps, as well as ad supported. So we saw how in paid apps, it is kind of the tiny minority, uh, and they can somebody choose to pay either upfront or through in-app subscriptions. And how, if it is ongoing value, then you can do a subscription, but if it is not, then doing a one time is better. We also looked at pricing and what are some of the challenges around it. Next, we looked at the advertising supported models, and how that is kind of a match made in heaven for apps, and how it is really the norm for apps. Vast majority of them use this. We also looked at how uh, this one amount of revenue that can be generated just from ads be very, very massive. Then we looked at how, at the face of it, this can seem very simple. You have an advertiser, you have a developer, and you have a ad space which gets provided, uh, and we saw some of the very simple challenges that advertiser wants to market only in a certain country, whereas you have users in so many different countries. Advertiser wants to market further within that country only to a certain set of users who's in their target audience, but you have users across uh, different target audiences using your app. And also you have a situation where the ad banner may not be as appropriate for the app. And then, so basically we saw that getting these ad dollars on our own, if on our own as a developer, can be pretty much impossible to do because of all of these different challenges, uh, unless you are somebody like a Facebook. So that's where these concept of ad networks really comes in, and what value they bring into both sides. On one side, they help advertisers get different sets of users, the right targeting and the right pricing. But on the other side, and more importantly for the developer, you can end up earning money just by integrating some code, and there is no upfront cost either. It's just a revenue share. So instead of doing all of these things, you just just work with our one ad network, and you're pretty much sorted. But then obviously, uh, then next we looked at the simplified ad flow. How does an ad uh, get shown within an app? That was the point. As you guys might be realizing over here that in this case now we're no longer wearing the hat of an advertiser, right? We're no longer a marketer. We're looking at this from a standpoint of how do we start earning money for our app within the app itself, right? So it for some of you it is a very different mindset. If you have been in the marketing side all your life, so but the key part of this is that there are many apps where all of the monetization is happening within the app itself, and that's why it's important to understand. If you are just somebody who is has a different uh, just from the advertising side of things, you don't necessarily always think about the revenue, but I believe as an app marketer you do need to think about it, especially because uh, you need to optimize your costs to some of these things. And if you're not going to earn revenue, then you will not be able to spend money to acquire users either. Anyway, so coming back to this, we saw the simplified ad flow. How do we start showing an ad within this game? And what is the sequence of events that really happens here? So there's an ad request. It goes out to the server. Server finds a relevant ad, sends it back. Sometimes it doesn't find an ad. Therefore, the fill rate may be less than 100%. So not every time you send a request, you get an ad back. Once you get an ad back, you end up showing it to the user, and post that the user may click on it if he is interested or not. And if he clicks on it, then you capture those details and send the user to the right advertiser URL. But as you might see with ad networks, there can be too much of a balancing act, right? There are very opposing needs for an ad network. So on one side, you have advertiser who wants to minimize his cost, and the other side. So that was the side we were looking at till now, right? As an advertiser, we were looking at saying how do we minimize cost. But at the same time, if you are looking at it from a developer standpoint or somebody who is trying to earn money from this, they're trying to maximize revenue, right? Okay, so there is some questions. Devdutt is saying that he really likes the FIFA mobile app and how they're monetizing their app. Devdutt, what do they do? If you can tell us. Kanika is saying, is this process automated or the developer needs to look at it every time? Good point. So, which are you referring to this flow, Kanika? This is 100% automated. This is 100% automated. So once you put in your code into the app and define where those ad needs to be shown, once you do that and put it up on the app store, now for every user it will function in pretty much that same way. And in every time the user needs to be shown an ad, this flow will happen automatically. Can somebody tell me how quickly does this flow happen? Just to really explain to Kanika how automated or how powerfully automated this is. This code asking for the ad request, going to the server coming back and sending back an ad. How quickly does this happen? Kanika is saying within seconds. How many seconds, Kanika? Anybody else has the answer? So she's right, it's happening in seconds. But how many seconds? Nobody wants to take a guess? 10 to 20 seconds. Okay, that's Kanika's guess. I'll just give you an answer, Kanika, much less than that. There's actually a benchmark for it. You know how much it is? So okay, let me give you. It is a fraction of a second. It's not even 1 second. It is 200 milliseconds to be precise. So that is the overall average that the industry expects. You should be able to request and get an ad back within 200 milliseconds. And all of the logic, all of the that okay, this is this type of an ad, this is the type of ad that we are is available, this is the bid request for it, and sending the ad back, all of that happens in 200 milliseconds. It's less than the time you can blink, it takes to blink your eye. Blinking your eye, if you do it really, really fast, just once, that is longer than the time it would take for the ad request to get served. So anyway, that's just to uh, give some context. So that's where we come back. Given that the ad networks can be, not necessarily trying to do the best for you as a developer, the ecosystem further evolved to having a supply side platform. So it is very much like an ad network from a developer standpoint. So he's just integrating some code and he starts getting ads. But he's not just getting ads from one particular ad network. He can be this request that goes out actually goes out first, to the ad supply side platform, and then from there they will send it to all of these different people, and each one of them will now kind of bid and send an ad back to the supply side platform. It will choose the one that has got the most value, highest bid, and then show that particular one to the user here. So this is obviously based on what is called as real-time bidding, which is a step ahead of what earlier bidding used to happen. So in real time, this guy will send out a ad request to all these people, and they will say it will say that okay, send me a bid. How much are you willing to pay for showing an ad in this place? And they will each one of them will look at it, try and say what is the maximum they can bid, and send it back, and then this will come and show it in the app. Again, all of this happening within 200 milliseconds. So obviously the advantage for a developer over here is that he knows which one to use, which ad to be shown right before, even before he makes a choice to show it. So which is the highest paying one, he can decide based on this real-time bidding, and he has full control and visibility over who is the advertiser. Do I want to allow this advertiser or not? I can choose to disable it, etc. as well, and uh, therefore this allows them to maximize their revenue. So this obviously helps with always having a relevant high paying ad to be shown to the user no matter where in the world your users are. Then we looked at an example of an explainer video of Mopub and how this is, ecosystem is further evolving and the many different players in it at those points. We looked at ad formats, very similar to what we've seen on the session prior when we're looking at advertising ourselves. The same ad formats are available to a developer to put in their app, and kind of native ads to make them look and feel like they are part of the app itself. And some of the key things to maximize revenue, we've seen uh, that you connect to as many different ad sources as possible, different DSPs, agencies, local ad networks, especially in certain countries. Google or Facebook is not the strongest. Also, what are the ad attributes that you can send along with the ad request? So the more of these you send through, the higher chance of and better chance of getting revenue, as well as uh, the most important thing over here is to track your metrics closely. So what is the most important metric from an earning side? We're going to look at this shortly, but what is the most important metric from an earning side on the ad side? Does anybody remember? What is the developer doing? He's showing an ad, right? And he's getting paid when? Just for showing the ad, or for only when somebody clicks on the ad, or when somebody actually does something after clicking on the ad? When does the developer get paid for showing an ad? Okay, so the when does a developer get paid? Typically, the answer for that is it depends on the campaign, right? That campaign might be a CPC campaign, therefore he will get paid when the ad gets clicked. That campaign might be a CPI campaign, so he gets paid only when the user actually installs the app, correct? Or it might be a CPM campaign where it, just by showing the ad, the developer gets paid. But as we saw with our campaigns as well, when we were an advertiser, to compare the performance of different campaigns, we had to bring the value down to a certain number or certain metric, which was ECPI. So similarly, for the developer side of things, you need to bring the value down to some common number that can be used across these different ways in which he's getting paid. And that number is ECPM. We'll talk about that and do an exercise on that shortly. Effective cost per thousand impressions. For effective cost of showing 1,000 ads. So for showing 1,000 ads on his app, how much is he earning? That's the metric that you use. Doesn't matter whether I finally get paid after click or after install or whatever. I'll show 1,000 ads. How much money do I earn? That's what I need to look at. All right, and then we looked at the freemium model and how in different countries different models work better. Uh, India, vast majority is advertising-based revenue, whereas in Japan, on the other extreme, advertising is much smaller. People are paying for stuff much more. Then there are two types of in-app purchases we saw: durable and consumable. And durable are ones that will be always available to the user once he purchases them, and consumable are ones that will expire or get finished off after a certain time. And then we saw the various different ways in which in-app purchases can be used based on either usage uh, or based on a free trial, or based on functionality, or based on improving the user experience. So somebody pays you for either in giving you more usage, right, or giving you a free trial, or to continue the functionality of the app after the free trial, or to have further increased functionality within the app itself, or improve the user experience, which means that remove ads or something like that. Those are the various ways in which uh, in-app purchases can be used. So Devdutt actually had a very interesting point here about FIFA, and just have a look at what he's saying. He's saying that so players play in real time, and they deduct certain energy points from you when you're playing an online match. So as you're playing this, these get deducted, and every day you're given a certain number of free fuel per day, right? As per your level. So 20 or 30 energy they give you. Now, if you are out of those energy points, you can play ads and earn 5 energy points for each of those ads, right? So, for a minute, just like first think of this, right? So, what is it? They have tried to put a limit on the usage, right? So, certain amount of usage they're giving for free, which is 20 to 30 energy points. And then if you want more than that, then you have to come and purchase more of it. And obviously they are giving you purchase in a small package, which is just these 5 energy points. And the more of those that you go and get, you can continue to play that much. Now, obviously, I'm sure there is a way for them in the app to kind of purchase this as well. So you can go and purchase some fuel points, right? So you can go and pay some money and you can purchase it. But on the other side of things, and that's where we come to the next point, that only a small percentage of people can pay, right? So you you know 90 or 95% of people will actually not be paying you. So what do you do about them? And that's where this concept of reward ads comes in. So these ads are very different from the previous ones that we saw. So the previous ones, they are organic or display ads, which means that you just show the ad to the user. If he's interested, he will tap on it. Otherwise, he won't, right? But what they do over here is that uh, they give you a, a choice that okay, you go and do this, watch this ad or do this action, and then based on that, you will get something. You will get some kind of benefit in this app. In the case of this FIFA example that was given, you watch an ad, and by doing that, you end up earning 5 fuel points. You know, the same thing you could do to, either by paying money, or you can do by getting just watching these ads and earning these small points and then continuing to use it. So now this way you end up having a situation where you are earning money for a certain thing, irrespective of whether the user wants to pay you money or wants to get it done for free by using these reward ads. And then, yeah, obviously, as you're saying, there'll be many other things that they're doing as well. So they've used the mix, right? So uh, they are also, like you said, you can use to buy FIFA cards. Now, FIFA cards is an example of this content or functionality, right? And therefore, they are using what is therefore a combination of these different models, right? Right. So that's so thank you for that example, and I think it becomes, given that you now look at it, it becomes much more real to you on how much money they must be earning by doing this. Kanika, these ads, obviously, they may not. They, obviously, the person who's serving these ads, they try and make it relevant for that user based on whatever information that they have about this user and previous things that the user has done, and so on. But the key thing over here is that ultimately the user, you're just getting the user to do something. Now that action might be installing an app, that action might be watching a video, right? Or action might be install and do something in another app. There can be all these different uh, pieces. So you're hoping that these users will come and do something for you later on, and that's how you leverage it. All right. So now that we've looked at earning revenue, we realize that most of the top countries in which where you're getting downloads, you're not generating revenue on Google Play. So people are not paying you for it. That's the other point I want to highlight. So therefore, these reward ads, are even more important, or using some other form of advertising is important to earn money. And also with in-app purchases, what happens is that the vast majority of them is getting generated on games. So if you look at overall downloads, very big chunk of them are uh, apps, not games. But if you look at the revenue, vast majority is really coming from games and not from apps. And that is because games, they have what is um, called consumable in-app purchases, which means that it gets over and then you have to buy again or buy again more and more. Whereas with most apps, that may not be the case. You once you buy, upgrade to a pro version, then you can be on it for forever almost. Devdat, is the FIFA purchase, uh, consumable or durable? Are they consumable or durable? So I would imagine that the ones that are related to the fuel, they are definitely consumable, right? Because they get over and then you have to buy more. Whereas something like FIFA cards or something that will stick around with the user for a long time, those are durable in-app purchases. All right, so with that, we've seen the various models here and how you want to combine these different models to earn most. So questions, guys? Yes, so that's what I was also saying, that their in-app purchases will be a combination of durable as well as consumable. Okay, yeah, I can show that. Kanika, 1 second. All right, so this is an example of a model. So it's not very apparent over here, but if you look closely, you might see that there is some part of it which is, grayed out, and it's kind of translucent, Kanika. So you can see part of the screen behind as well. And if this screen was a proper screen, you would have been able to. This is just a test one, so it's not so visible. But uh, what happens is that a pop-up comes up, and you can close it. But instead of it takes over the full screen. You can't do anything behind it. But at the same time, it lets the part of it be transparent, so that you have a sense of where you are on the screen and why the screen has come up. So it maintains context, Kanika, of where you were in the app and when this came up. So that's an example of a modal layout. Yeah, it is somewhere between just a pop-up and or just a banner and a full screen ad. So it takes over the full screen but maintains context. Sometimes you don't want your users to get confused with uh, an ad that suddenly or any other unit that completely takes over the screen. You won't even remember where he was. So that's why you try and maintain context and use this. More questions, guys? Anshuman saying, are ads the only way free app generates money? Anshuman, in-app purchases is another one, as we saw. In-app purchases, some some percentage of users might be paying, while for the rest it is still free. And they may not even be putting ads. Some of them don't even put ads in the free side of things. They'll just limit the functionality and leave it. And Devda, thank you for the example of FIFA. I think it made it much more real for you and for others as well. Anjuman is saying for returns for paid app must be higher. Uh, so Anjuman, once the key thing to understand with apps is that, see, once you've made the app, whether one user uses it or 1 million users use it, there is not significant difference to you, especially if there's no server-side component and things like that. Right? So if it's a game that is running on the user's device, there is no further actual cost to you. Now, if you look at it from that perspective, you can either choose to be like, okay, fine, I'll just keep my ad paid, and I will only give it to, only 100,000 people will end up buying it. 1,000 into, $5, $5,000, great money. Happy birthday, thank you very much. That's one way of looking at it. The other way is that, no, I will have this app which millions of people can potentially use, and out of those millions, maybe 10,000 of them might end up purchasing something, and they pay a dollar or two, and you end up getting $20,000. So even though you give the app away for free, you actually end up generating more revenue than the paid app. So that is a great example of additional functionality based on a in-app purchase. And if you notice that, I don't know whether Cam Scanner is a subscription or it is a one-time purchase, but uh, it's a good example of doing in-app purchases. The key thing is that you end up getting in the right type of users for your app who see value in it, and over time, people will convert. It's not that people who convert on day one are the people who convert. People who don't convert on that day, after that, they'll never convert. You'll actually have a situation where slowly, or lot more and more people from your base will start converting to doing some paid transaction or generating some other form of revenue for you. All right, more questions? More questions, guys? Otherwise, we'll go ahead. Okay, so let's do this exercise. Which of this? So you're in the market to buy a TV. Please don't assume that you know anything about TV and what is the market rate right now and all that. This is just a very simple example. I'm trying to highlight a concept to you. You have come to buy a TV. You have come to the shop, Chroma. I am the sales guy over there. I show you three TVs and tell you the price of those three TVs. Other functionality remaining broadly the same. I tell you these three choices. Which one would you end up choosing? Kanika, Devdutt, Subhash, Sanjay, which one would you choose out of these three? Given the price and the size, which TV would you choose? That's okay. Kanika is saying 56, okay. Others, Subhash, Sanjay? So Kanika, why would you choose 56? Okay. Anjuman, why did you choose 42? Sanjay, Subhash, your answers, please. So most people over here end up choosing 42. So Kanika is the odd man out in this case. But anyway, so what people usually see that, okay, for just a little bit more money, I get a significantly better TV. Whereas over here, it's almost 9,000, 10,000 bucks I have to spend more, and then I get this. um, may not be worth it. So most people see that the value over here, right? Correct. So uh, now, if you look at this example now, I've changed this. The only thing I've changed is the price. Everything else is same. Which one would you end up choosing? So now this time, Karika, your choice is slightly more in line with everybody else. But yeah, the key point I'm trying to highlight over here, the price of 56 is the same in both, but the reference point is what is making you choose one versus the other. Now in the previous one, your reference point was 10,000 rupees. Okay, 10,000 rupees में TV मिल रहा है, and if I pay a little bit more, I get this much better, bigger one. Uh, but the jump to 56 is usually quite high. It is people see that as high and they may not choose it. But over here, you now look at it and you say, okay, 12,000 में है TV, a little bit more money, I get a good one, a bigger one, but very little difference more, and I get a really big one, right? And that's where that you make the 56-inch one look cheap, whereas in both cases the price was actually the same, right? So that's the same thing that you have to do when you're even structuring your in-app purchases. Now there was this particular app. It is kind of like a app to help plan your travel when you go to a certain city. So for example, you go to Paris or New York or whatever, some city where there is a lot to be seen and done. There are so many things, so you try and plan that more effectively. So this app allows you to do that. So they earlier had a choice just of okay, unlock one city. So they give you 1 day for free. If you want more than that, then you need to buy or do this in-app purchase. Now, if you have what the designer of this app did, he said that okay, currently there is these two choices, and let's see if I can do something to help increase the revenue by doing some UI changes. So what he did is he introduced one more third choice. And what do you think happened over here? What do you think happened, guys? Did revenue increase, decrease? What happened? What option did people choose? All right, some of you have got the drift of it. So this is the actual heat map of what was happening then. So earlier, people would just choose the one city. Earlier, people would just choose one city, which is the lower option. But just by putting this one more option in between, you ended up having a situation where many people were actually choosing all cities. They started seeing value in the all cities. So they were basing their decision of the fact that two cities was costing so much. So they saw, and actually this option is so bullshit if you look at it. Let me just go back to it. One city is 199. Two should be what? Less than $4, right? 398 or whatever. But he's actually made this choice 449. It's that bullshit a choice. But anyway, what it helped is that it pushed and made this option look much better, and therefore more people went to all cities. So 40 earlier 19% people were choosing all cities. Later on, 43% of people started choosing all cities. No change in other product, no change in anything else. Just kind of cleverly manipulating the user into believing or seeing value. And that impact on revenue ended up being significant. Obviously, it was earning $25,000 earlier, started earning $33,000. All right. Kanchon, very good example. Yeah, so that's broadly the direction. See, the guy is coming to you anyway. You have to deal with him, give him time to take money, give him chai, hand it to him. Your cost of the making tea, etc., is all there. Only variable is the amount of water and milk, really, right? And by doing, you actually end up earning much more on that full versus the half. So yeah, I think that's a great example. All right, let's look at the next thing we here, which is Facebook's metrics and revenue across all these different points. Uh, so very interesting thing over here. If you look at the monthly active users, vast majority of them are in what they call Asia Pacific and rest of world. So while they are a US based company, and US, Europe, etc., is their big markets maybe from a revenue standpoint, vast majority of their users, and even not just existing users, but even growth, if you notice, vast majority of users and growth is actually coming from outside, which is rest of world and Asia Pacific. Having said that, and their obviously their DAU percentage is also very high. If you have this kind of a DAU percentage, means so many two-thirds, 2 out of 3 people using your app every day, right? Not just once a month. But your vast majority of your revenue, almost half of it, coming just from one country, or rather one region, which is US and Canada. So it's a very strange situation where a very tiny percentage of your users is actually giving you the vast majority of your revenue. So why do you think this is happening, guys? Is it that people over here use it more in the US? Or is it that more ads are being shown to these users? Remember, all of this revenue is really coming on Facebook from ads, right? It's not like somebody's paying you hard money or cash over there. It's all coming from advertising. So is it that these users are using it more, or there are more number of ads being shown in this market, or is it there's a higher ECPM in that country? Others, what do you think? Advertisers are paying you a higher amount or bidding a higher amount to be seen in Facebook, right? In these countries compared to India and other markets. So when a higher amount is being paid, they're ending up generating much more revenue per user. So in the US, over the quarter, almost $19 odd dollars earned by showing ads to the user, whereas in a country which is lying in the rest of the world, only $1.5 was earned for showing an ad to that user, because the advertiser is not bidding that much. So over here, the competition is higher, ECPM is higher. Here, competition is lower, amounts are lower. Obviously, there's the dollar value aspect as well. India, you might be paying a high amount, but when you compare it to dollar amounts, it becomes smaller, relatively speaking. So that aspect is also there, no doubt. But significantly more revenue or higher prices, ECPM in the US. They're the same thing as you have high potential users for advertisers in India also, right? And those users are being targeted in India as well. So But the key thing is the pricing over there is higher, so your ECPM is higher, as simple as that. So that's broadly what I wanted to highlight to you, that if you look at your different countries, your earnings are actually different in these different countries. So now let's get into the third and final exercise for today. The question is, you have an app and you want to figure out which uh, platform is going to give you the best money or the most money to uh, by showing ads of, from that you end up earning more money. The first thing is that, if as you remember, you don't know whether these ads are being served on CPM, CPC, CPI, whatever, right? And there'll be usually a mix of things, right? If it's coming from a certain platform, uh, some of them, those campaigns might be on CPM, some might be CPI, some might be CPC, etc. But what really matters to you is that I showed 100,000 ads on my app, and how much money did I earn for it, right? So based on this, you will calculate the ECPM, which means your revenue divided by your ads, and that will give you a number, ECPM. ECPM is cost per thousand, please remember. So you basically are going to be dividing 300 by 100,000 and multiplying it by 1,000. That will give you your ECPM. So you will look at this, you'll calculate the ECPM for all three, and then we'll discuss which one of these should be used in your app so that you earn the most amount of money. Okay, so I'll just give you a quick 5 minutes to do this. Guys, please calculate the ECPM for each of these three platforms. All right. So, Ajman, I see your confusion. That's okay. Kanika, I didn't. What are your answers for one, two, and three? Oh, sorry, A, B, and C. Kanika, what are the numerical values for that you've got as answer before you chose B as the one? So, which one should we use, Kanika? All right. Now let's look at the answers. Poor Anshuman here. He had got the answer. He had understood it, and then you both have confused him. But no worries. We'll now look at this. So answer everybody's got right. Simple है. मतलब division ही करना था. Nothing else needed to be done. 300 divided by 100,000 divide multiply by 1,000 gives you 3, 1 and 2. Now what are you trying to do over here? Who are you? You are the developer of the app, right? What do you want to do? You want to earn money, right? Right? So you want to earn more money. So if you showed 100,000 ads of this, okay, let's do one thing. Let's assume that in your app you have a total chance of say 1 million ads you can show. Okay, 1 million ads in a month you can show in your app. Okay, that's the max, roughly, mota moti. So if I was to show campaigns only from A, how much would I earn? 1 million into 3 divided by 1,000, correct? So I would earn $3,000. $3,000, correct? In a month. On the other hand, if I was to show only ads from campaign B, 1 million ads, how much would I earn? 1 million into 1 divided by 1,000. How much is that? 1,000. 1,000. 3,000. What are you trying to do? Earn money. In 1 month, you earn $3,000. In 1 month, you earn $1,000. What would you prefer if your salary was $3,000 or $1,000? Correct? So by choosing B, you would end up losing $2,000 of revenue. Why would you do that? You would choose this one and earn $3,000. Correct? Is it clear for everybody which one should we choose? Clear hai? Everybody, Devdat? Okay. Now that this is clear, let's go ahead. So the next point is, please don't jump to conclusions. A, yes, you were earning $3, it's fine overall. Global average was 3. Global average was 1. Global average was 2. But this number was different in different countries. India, it was only 0.7 in campaign A. When you were showing ads in India, you were earning only 0.7. USA you are earning 3, UK you are earning 4, Russia you are earning 0 with campaign A or platform A basically. On the other hand, if you were using platform B, you were actually earning $1, which is higher than zero point 0.7 in India. USA was lower, UK also was maybe lower. Russia, you were at least earning something. Instead of 0, you were earning 0.8. And this last one, while it is $2 global average, India it was 0. If you try to show ads from this guy in India, you would be earning 0. With ads serve in your eye or whatever, very low cost. USA only $1. You're better off showing ads from even this B guy versus this, very low. UK, yes, $3, and Russia they're actually giving you $2 per ad or per 1,000 ads instead of 0 and instead of zero point 0.8. Now, which one would you use? Which of these three would you use? Okay, Anshuman is saying B, giving you earnings in all regions. Smart answer, Anshuman. Others, what do you think? Best average. Okay. Best average means what they've done? I don't understand. Kanika, what's your answer? Either what do you mean best average, and Kanika, what's your answer? Okay, so what is our objective? We have to maximize revenue or average our revenue? Globally तो यही highest है. If I want to earn more than this, what should I do? So the short answer is you have to use all three. You have to use all three. We're not spending, Devdutt, we're not spending, we are earning. We are earning in Russia, not spending. Should the answer be we should not earn in Russia? We have to earn everywhere. So what we have to do is, when the countries USA or UK, we need to get an ad from this guy. When country is India, we should get an ad from this guy. And when country is Russia, we need to get an ad from this guy. Then you will earn the most. Correct? That's when you will maximize your revenue, no? Clear? So your ad platform will check where is the user coming from, which is the best guy to send this to, and then send the ad request to that partner, and that's how you will earn the most. Now, if you just look at this already, it's confusing, right? And right now, I just have some 3 ad partners, one A, B, and C. How many ad partners can you potentially have in the real world when you actually do these kind of things? You want to take a guess? How many ad partners will you have? Agencies, networks, etc. Anshu was saying one, and Devadatta is saying unlimited. Sida. We are living in the world. It will be limited. The number will be very high, but it will be like 50 or 100 ad partners or more, depending on like how small you go. Potentially 50 or 100 columns you will have over here. Okay, Anjuman? 50 or 100 columns of ad partners with rates in each country. And how many countries will you be in? Just 4 countries? Or will it be many more countries, right? Your app will be used in many countries, right? 150 countries. So even if you want to take the top 50 countries, at least 50 countries and 50 ad partners. How many rows over here will you have, or cells you'll have over here? 2500 cells, you'll be looking at just the number, which one is giving highest. Obviously, and this I'm just taking at a lower side, obviously more countries, etc., all that. Now let me further confuse you, or rather further increase the complexity. Each will have different rates for different Android and iOS. It will have different rates for Android and iOS further. I have not even bothered filling in the values over here because it was already so confusing and difficult to look at. So what you need to do is pick up a supply side platform or a partner, one network that you, or sorry, one supply side platform, and then connect all of these different 50 or whatever ad partners into it, and then from there set it to optimize automatically in some way. Some places you might put some manual rules as well. And if it is India, then show this guy. If it is that other country, then show that guy, etc. But at the base of it, these rates also change, right? This rate is not going to be static. These rates will change every day, if not every hour. Actually, in real time, these rates change. But let's assume even 1 ghanta bhi hua, 1 hour we do and we change and optimize after that again. You'll be optimizing 24 times a day, and obviously you need to sleep, right? So you can't optimize all the time. But this is happening all the time. While USA is awake, you are sleeping, right? So this needs to be automated and optimized automatically. The short answer is, Dev, that you need to use all available ad partners and all available permutation combinations across all different countries, and this should be done automatically. There's no way to do it manually if you are looking to maximize. Okay, is that clear? So with that, we'll close for today and this module as well. Uh, have any of you seen the dashboard for, say, Mopub or some other platform? If you like, I can just show it to you. It's nothing much to be shown over there. It's just it's a dummy account, but in case you just want to have a look, I can do that. For those of you who are interested, otherwise we will. Okay, so I'll show it to you guys. I just maybe finish off the this other stuff, so then we can have a look at that. I'm giving you the link for the feedback, and then we'll have a look at the mop-up dashboard. Please let me know once you're done with the feedback, so then I can continue.